Welcome to another Google Ads tutorial. In this video I'm going to show you how to set up a search campaign. Now this is assuming you already have an account. If you don't have an account yet, watch my other video on how to sign up for Google Ads. So when you're in your account, there's an overview button in the light gray menu on the left hand side, and then new campaign will be at the top of the page. So you can simply click on there and start a new campaign. Alternatively, you can go to campaigns in the light gray menu and then just click the blue button with the plus symbol, and we go for new campaign. Now the first thing it asks you to do is to choose your objective. We're going to go for create a campaign without a goals guidance right now, because then we'll have all of the options available to us. But I do recommend setting a goal for your campaign, then it'll be more optimized for the system. And remember, you're offering your ads to a system who is going to offer it to users. So the system needs to understand what the goal of your campaign is in order to make it work. Now, certain goals are also matched to certain campaign types. So for example, if our goal is sales, we get all these different kinds of campaign options like search, performance max, display. Whereas if we choose brand awareness and reach, the only options are display and video. So if you were thinking to create a search campaign to reach brand awareness and reach, that might not be the best idea. But for now, we're going to click on create a campaign without a goals guidance, and you get all of the options. And of course, this is a tutorial for a search campaign, so I'm going to click on search. Now, generally, you'll want to create a search campaign for website visits. Now, my own website is not up yet, so I'm going to use Nintendo because I really like Nintendo. And for the campaign name, especially if you're going to create multiple campaigns, I recommend giving it a name that you will recognize it by. For now, I will call this YouTube search tutorial. So now that we've chosen our type of campaign, we're going to go into the campaign settings. Now for bidding, it is a little bit annoying that it asks for your bidding strategy and maybe your max bid. But it doesn't let you set the budget here yet. That's coming up later. So what do you want to focus on, which is generally clicks or conversions. Now conversions are not possible for me in this account right now because I have not set up conversion tracking. Plus, even if I had, it's best to start a new campaign with, especially if it's the first campaign in an account, with a clicks-based bidding strategy, because your account needs to collect data in order to optimize for conversions. Now you'll see here in the blue it says or select a bid strategy directly. So if we click on there, we will get all the literal types of bid strategies instead of just choosing that we want to focus on clicks or conversions. I will be making a different video where I go into bidding strategies in depth. To keep this a simple tutorial, we're just going to go for maximize clicks right now, which is the most mainstream click-based bidding strategy. You can set a max CPC, so a maximum cost per click, and the system will never bid higher than what you set as your max CPC. And for manual CPC, you can manually set all of your bids per keyword, etc. And with maximize clicks, the system will optimize for it. So generally, if you're starting with Google Ads, that's going to be the best one. Now you see here, set a maximum cost per click bid limit. So I'm going to put €1 there for now. And then the system will not bid higher than the €1. Then the networks. We basically only want to be on the search network. We're going to uncheck include Google search partners, and I'm going to show you why. If you hover over this question mark, you will see a very vague disclaimer. Some clicks on the search partner network may cost more or less than your Google search max CPC bid. Now generally, from what I've seen auditing thousands of accounts, it generally stays within the realms of your max CPC bid. But I have also seen cases where an entire daily budget was spent on one search partner click, and because of this disclaimer, it is technically working as intended when it does that. So that's the reason you want to uncheck the Google search partners, because then you have no control over what's going to be spent on just one click. The display network we also want to exclude, not because the display network is bad, but because if we want to advertise on the display network, we will make a display campaign and not a search campaign. Then locations. Now, all countries and territories you basically only want to do if you're a web shop that ships worldwide. Enter location, you can put anything you want. So for now, I'm going to put the United States, but you can also choose a city. You can even target on some zip codes, but if you can target a specific area, it also depends on a privacy threshold. How many people live there, how many active users are there. If that number is too low, then you cannot target it specifically. Then another very important thing is location options. You're gonna want to set this to presence, people in or regularly in your targeted locations. Now by default, this one is selected, presence or interest, people in or regularly in, or who've shown interest in your targeted locations. Now, I live in Portugal right now, but I'm from the Netherlands, so I'm still interested in the Netherlands. I go to Dutch websites, I read the Dutch news, So sometimes I get ads for businesses in the Netherlands that are completely irrelevant to me, but because they most likely have this setting, I still get those ads. Then search interest. This is an interesting setting for people in the tourism industry. Let's say you have a touristic hotspot somewhere, then you might want to target people who are interested in that. So if they're in one part of the world and they're searching for things to do in wherever you have your thing, you can reach those people that way. Now for exclusions, you can't set any exclusions here yet. You can do that after the campaign has been set up. But generally, depending on how strict you want your exclusion to be, you might want to go for presence or interested. And it kind of depends on how tight you want your exclusion to be. Now for languages, it is very important that you keep this the same as your ad copy. So for example, here you can see I was searching for car rentals and I got a Portuguese ad, even though I don't speak Portuguese and my browser settings are in English. So what that advertiser most likely did was they added both Portuguese and English as languages, so that made me as an English user eligible to be shown this Portuguese ad, even though I don't speak Portuguese. So always keep this language the language of your ad copy. Then next we have audience segments. I'm just going to skip this for now. I will be making an entirely different video about audience segments, but there's one setting I want to go over, which is targeting versus observation. Now with targeting, you are explicitly targeting the people in those audiences, and users who are not in those audiences will not be eligible for your ad to be shown. Now with observation, particularly on the search campaign, I would always recommend this, because when you set an audience to observation, you don't limit the reach of your campaign like you would with targeting, but with observation, you will get data about these audiences. So observation, especially on a search campaign, is a very good way to find data about potential target audiences, which you can then build a targeted campaign for. Dynamic search ads, I will also be making an entirely separate video about. Now, if we go to more settings, never forget that. Ad rotation, I'm going to keep it very short. It's best to keep it on prefer best performing ads. But that can also mean that if you have 3 ads in your ad group, that one might have thousands of clicks, whereas another one barely has a few hundred. But that is perfectly normal, and you can adapt your ad copy based on that data. If you want, you can set your start and end dates here if you just want to run a campaign temporarily. I'm just going to keep it at this for now. You can create an ad schedule. Do you want to show your ads 24/7, or maybe only on Mondays to Fridays from 8 to 5 because that's when your business is open? That really depends on the kind of business you're advertising for. In most cases, 24/7 advertisement is great. What you can also do is start a campaign running 24/7, and then you might notice that some clicks at certain times of the day are not really converting, or some days are more expensive than other days. So I would suggest keeping, unless you have a very good reason not to do that, I would suggest keeping it at 24/7 for the first 2 weeks, and then you can make adjustments to your campaign based on the data that you've received over those 2 weeks. Campaign URL options, you can add a tracking template. Most people will simply want to use the auto tagging, but if you want to do some manual tagging, you can add that here under campaign URL options. So then for the keywords, you can manually enter your keywords, but you have also your domain here, and you can simply click on get keywords. I would also highly recommend using the keyword planner, but I will also be making a separate video about that. Now, to keep this just a simple search campaign setup tutorial, I'm not going to deep dive into these keywords, but you can see how it works. You have your domain here, you click on get keywords. This is also a good way to dive into some SEO for your website, because there might be completely irrelevant search terms, but if Google is pulling them from your website, then you might have to take a look at your website if those keywords are indeed completely irrelevant. What I will also be discussing in the keyword planner video is match typing for keywords. Now that's changed a lot the past year, and broad match specifically has gotten a lot better over the past few years because Google has a lot more data to work with. Their machine learning is pretty advanced. So years ago, most advertisers would have told you broad match is the worst thing to do, but by now it is actually pretty decent. Plus, exact match is not exactly exact anymore anyway, because it's more based on user intent. So broad match is safe to go with now, but I will get into detail on that in my keyword planner video. So then we get to the actual ads. So for the final URL, you don't have to use your website's homepage. You could, of course, especially if there's a good call to action on there or something, but you can also create a very specific landing page. Now for display path, you can be a little bit clickbaity here. You cannot change the domain, so the domain has to match. You cannot mislead people, but maybe the actual final URL of the page you're sending people to is not that attractive, so you can put two very clear words here. Then you can start to enter all of your headlines. There need to be at least 3, and there can be a maximum of 15. And Google will serve them in different combinations and in different orders depending on what they think is best for the user that's being shown that ad at that moment. But if you want a certain headline to always show in the first position or always show in the second position because they don't make sense in any other positions, or the message that you have in that headline is so important to you, you can hover over it and click this little pin here, and then you can pin it to position 1, position 2, or position 3. This is also a way to still get around the responsive search setup and create a classic expanded text ad. You can simply add 3 headlines and pin them to the first, second, and third place, and then the ad will always show like that. So then for descriptions, you can add 4 with a minimum of 2, and again you can pin in the first and the second position if you don't want your ad to work like a responsive ad, but you want them to stick in the same position. And again, add URL options is for tracking. If you want to add manual tagging, you can do that there. So then done, and here's a preview of my ad. So we go to next. And next is extensions. That's also another topic I'll be making a dedicated video about. I will quickly go over the 2 most important ones, which are site link and callout extensions. With site link extensions specifically, you can add different landing pages to send people to a different page on your website. It says add at least 2. I would recommend adding at least 6. Because 4 site links can show at once, and if you have 6, then there's room for the system to choose the best 4 for that user. But again, that also kind of depends on what type of business you have and what your website is like. You don't want to add nonsense to the site links, of course, because then that makes the customer less likely to click on your ad if there's nothing relevant. So try to add as much as you can while still keeping it relevant. Now on callout extensions, you can add brief little snippets kind of to tell customers a little bit more about your business that might intrigue them. Call extensions I would actually recommend you don't use because if people click on the call extension, it will count as a click and you will pay for that click even if they don't actually call you, because when a customer clicks on a call extension, the numeral pad of their phone will open up and they still have to click on the green phone to actually call you. Then there's more extensions, but as I said before, I will talk about that in detail in another video. There's actually even more extensions than this, such as image extensions, but they have some spend requirements for the account, and since this is a brand new account, I'm not eligible for image extensions and it's not showing here. So now we get to set the budget, and it's suggesting a budget of 461 per day for me. I'm not going to do that. We're going to make it 10, and I'm going to make it 10 because it's also interesting that it's showing the dollar sign here, even though this is a euro account. So earlier we set our max CPC at €1. In order for the system to work optimally, it can definitely work if your ratio is off, but it will not work optimally. To work optimally, you should have your bid and budget ratio to be 1 to 10. So with €1 bid, €10 daily budget. If I wanted to make my max bid €2, it would be better to also make my daily budget at least 20. And yeah, well, that's obvious. Selecting a budget that's less than anything may prevent your ads from showing as often as they could, because the higher your daily budget, the more your ad can show. Another important thing to note about the daily budget is that some days you can spend double your daily budget, but it's more like a monthly budget. So over the course of a month, you will never spend more than your daily budget times 30 point something, like the average days in a month. But there might be some days where I'm going to spend 20 to compensate for the days where I spend less. Sometimes it also happens that the Google Ads system gets a bit too enthusiastic and it might overspend even more, but you will never pay for whatever it spends more than 2 times your daily budget. So always keep that in mind and just consider yourself lucky if it spends a little bit over that. Then afterwards you can go to reports and go to free clicks and build cost, and there you can see that if it spends more than twice the daily budget, you will not be charged for that. They're just free clicks basically. Now here it's already suggesting that I should add some extensions. I definitely agree with that as well. You should always add some extensions to your campaign, but I will be making a different video about that, and this is just a simple search tutorial. Here you can review all of your settings again, and then you click on Publish Campaign. Earlier I mentioned we couldn't set up location exclusions during a campaign setup. You have to do that after. There's some more things that you can only change to your campaign after it's been set up. Once you have your campaign, you simply click on it and you get your light gray menu with all of the options. If you click on Show More, you will get even more, including locations. And then we can go to Excluded, and I can exclude some countries if I want. Then one more important thing I want to talk about is the Recommendations tab. So right now for me, there's a very obvious one. I still need to complete my billing profile, otherwise the campaign is never going to run. So this is actually a very good recommendation because the campaign will never run without this. Generally, there'll be recommendations here like I actually expected, adding extensions to be there. It's a good thing to look at, but there's a setting in your account that's on by default, and we don't want that. So now here, if we click on settings, while the campaign is selected, we just get the campaign settings, but we want the account settings. So you click on the Google Ads logo, and now if we go to settings, you see I don't have the campaign selected. Now if we go to settings, there is also account settings. And the fifth one from the top is the one where you might want to change the setting. Add suggestions. This setting is set by default if you have a new account. So the account will make a recommendation to you, and if you don't do anything with it, like you don't reject the idea, it's going to be automatically applied after 14 days of being a notification in your account. Now, we do not want that, so set it to don't automatically apply add suggestions. Now you can give a reason for it if you want. The important thing is don't use the auto apply. Then if we go back to the campaign settings, like I said earlier, it is important to choose a goal for your campaign. So under marketing objective right now, it says no marketing objective selected, but let's go for website traffic. With max clicks, that will work very well. Now the system knows what it needs to do. Here at the top, you see that the bid strategy is learning. Now that's only for smart bidding. For automated bidding, it typically takes 3 to 5 days for the bid strategy to be learning. So you may not want to take the results of your campaign too seriously until the campaign is out of the learning phase, because in the learning phase, lower results are expected. Now, if you make any changes to your bidding or your budget, it will go back in the learning phase. If we go to ads and extensions, the ad is here. You will see it's under review. Typically, ads are reviewed in a few hours. They should be reviewed within 24 hours. If it takes longer than 48 hours, then you can contact support to see if it can be pushed manually. Maybe there's a bug, or you can re-upload your ad, and that might actually be faster than contacting support. So generally, they're reviewed in a few hours, but they should be reviewed within 24. Longer than 48, there is an actual issue. Now, if you want to change some of the keywords from broad match to phrase or exact match, you can do that just from the keywords tab. So there is a lot I could keep talking about keywords and audiences and other settings in the campaign, but I'll be making separate videos about that. For now, I hope you learned something to set up your first search campaign. Subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about Google Ads, and hope to see you on the next video.